For years, Foxhole has been the best milsim in gaming. Not because it has the best graphics or because it has the best shooting mechanics, but because it actually makes you feel like a tiny, insignificant cog in some giant, painfully unforgiving war machine. Foxhole doesn't just give you the weapons, ammo, and vehicles to play with like other games. You have to do it all yourself. Want bullets for that gun on the front line? Well, go smack this salvage with a hammer, drive it to a refinery, wait, drive your new basic materials to a factory, wait, and then drive your crate of bullets to the front line. And that's just the process for basic items. You want something like petrol for your vehicles? Well, I hope you spent the last week managing an oil field and refining it. Otherwise, you're not getting any. But there's been one thing that Foxhole has been missing over the years. Infantry, artillery, tanks, ships, logistics, all the typical areas you'd expect to see in a milsim game has been here, except one: air combat. And that has officially changed with the introduction of Foxhole Airborne. Now, if you watched any of my videos or streams recently, you'd know that for the past month, Foxhole's community has been testing out all the new planes on the dev branch. This dev branch is a separate testing area where the normal 24/7 persistent war rules don't apply. But a couple days ago was the start of what is called a pre-patch war. The pre-patch war is a sort of test war before the official Airborne update drops on February 9th, and many people take the pre-patch war as a practice run before the real thing. Regiments plan their day one strategies, they test different building setups, they practice combat operations. It can get pretty serious, and it was here on day 2 of this pre-patch war where I realized that Foxhole had changed forever. I started my day by joining the Frontline over in Onyx, which is one of the new colonial hexes out east. Wardens had blitzed through the neighboring hex of Tyrant Foothills and had managed to secure not just the Cisterna Run relic, but by doing so we had also neutralized one of the few colonial airfields in the south. As infantry, push guns, and armored cars continued to push westward, our faction unlocked the Luminary Mark IV Herald, a cheap and relatively weak scout plane. Even though this was the pre-patch war, this would still be the first time a plane would ever be used in a real war with real front lines and real logistics nonetheless, and many people were wondering how good these planes could really be. However, I learned very quickly that these things are far more deadly than they look. But before we can talk about how we use these planes, we first need to talk about how a typical Foxhole frontline works. Just like real wars, there are a few ways in which Foxhole territory changes hands. If nobody is there to defend it, one side will simply take it. If one side has overwhelming manpower or firepower, then the other side will lose it. And if one side can cut off the other's logistics, then they will slowly bleed out of reinforcements. The Logicut, as it's known in Foxhole, is one of the most common ways to take territory in-game. From small-scale Logicuts in one region to remove resupply to a frontline bunker base, to larger Logicuts which can remove resupplies from entire towns, and strategic Logicuts in which one side cuts off an entire hex from the rest of the front. Now, this is vastly simplifying potential asymmetry in weaponry, manpower differences, terrain, and everything else that can happen in a battle, but for the most part, if you want to win territory in Foxhole, you need to Logicut. And that is especially true in the first days of war. In these first few days, players don't have that high-powered weaponry like artilleries and tanks. It's simply not teched yet. So the only way to destroy enemy fortifications is to use low-damage attacks with Mammon high-explosive grenades. That can take a long time to do. For example, it takes over 200 Mammons to destroy a Tier 3 town hall, and that's without anyone inside repairing it. This is why Logicuts are so important. You not only need to cut off the enemy's ability to not just fight, but also repair. And now that we know that, this brings us to today's frontline in Onyx. In any other war, Onyx would be absolutely miserable to fight over. The north side of the hex has 8 separate bridges, which are historically used to stall attacks and aren't typically successfully crossed until artillery is teched. Additionally, the town of the Brink is extremely mountainous with very concentrated industry. It has a refinery, 2 factories, a construction yard, a garage, multiple salvage and sulfur mines, and a seaport and shipyard. Everything the Colonials need to simply survive and withstand early war attacks is right here, whereas the Wardens need to travel nearly 2 hexes to resupply their front line. In usual Foxhole math, the Colonials will always win here. They might not necessarily take any territory, but this is a very easy hold until artillery, even with low population. So when I went to deploy here, I wasn't expecting much. Deploying to the front line in Onyx was very one-directional for the infantry. How exactly could one logicut this relic base and remove resupply? Well, the truth was, we couldn't. The Colonials had built a giant bunker base on the south side of this bridge, and although we could get in to harass the town, it was practically impossible to do anything more than be a nuisance. Now, I had fun being a nuisance, but that was really it. Logi was safely gathering materials at the salvage mines, refining them into basic materials, and then cooking whatever they needed at the factory. Once that was all ready, they simply traveled very quickly and very safely to the front line. But this is where our planes came in, and this is where everything changed forever. The Warden Scout planes are armed with one cockpit-mounted 12.7mm machine gun and can carry up to 4 torpedoes, which a second player can launch from the bombardier seat. I had been on the front line as an infantryman for an hour or so, trying to harass these backline players, but as we just said, it was practically impossible to do any real damage. After a couple trips, I redeployed at the relic base and had the opportunity to join the Warden Navy as a bombardier. The regiment had flown in about a dozen of our new scout planes, and their earlier scouts had spotted a colonial gunboat off the coast of the Brink. These gunboats can fire mortars and would absolutely shred our frontline infantry, so it needed to die.
We got you a prime target.
All right. I'm looking.
He's on the map, if you just look at your map marker.
Got it.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, yeah, I see him.
Drop away.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, that splashed.
There we go.
Oh, he's running away. We'll get behind him.
Oh, I'm reloading. Hold on. You can do another one. I didn't realize we had 2 more. Going for another run. Yeah! Let's go, dude. That's sick. Having dealt the final blow, we headed back to the relic, and I was given a plane all to myself to join the Warden Navy in their air operations in the region, and it was eye-opening. With the naval threat dealt with, we flew to the neighboring hex of Reavers Pass and raided their airfield. A swarm of Warden scouts diving helpless colonial pilots, picking apart infantry and planes, all before calmly flying back to land, refuel, rearm, and do it all again. Our overwhelming numbers and constant pressure was seen almost immediately. The Colonials could no longer contest the skies in Onyx. The defenders at the Beholder Span relic base were busy fighting off infantry and vehicles on the ground, but little did they know that they were slowly being bled dry from the sky. A town and region that was almost impossible to logicut this early in the war in the past was open. Our planes had complete freedom to harass the Brink. We flooded the skies, harassing not just Logi players on the way to resupply the front line, but also the ones in the city itself. We destroyed vehicles outside the seaport. We destroyed salvage vehicles trying to pull raw materials from the mines. We destroyed vehicles cooking material at the factories and pulling B-mats from the refinery. Colonial logistics players were scrambling. Instead of running logistics to supply the front, they now had to start pumping out anti-air defenses. These AA guns began popping up all over the city, in courtyards, on ledges, on hillsides, but we didn't stop. When the guns chased one plane, we would dive down and strafe the infantry manning them. And then we would rearm, repair, and hit the relic base. Colonials began building amphibious APCs to try and resupply the relic, but it was no use. The pressure back in the Brink had allowed for our infantry and vehicles to push up within spitting distance of the collies. As day broke, we strafed the trenches, the machine gun emplacements. We even strafed the infantry inside the relic. It was an absolute bloodbath, and not long after, the relic fell. But we weren't done. We began to rotate our planes. A group would push out to hit the airfield in Reavers, a group would patrol the city, a group would patrol the seas. We were bleeding the Colonials dry in every part of the region, and they knew it. For good measure, not only would we destroy the planes on the runway or destroy the vehicles on the road, but we'd then make a second pass to kill the crew too. We wanted total Warden victory. We didn't want the players to go find more resources and build more vehicles. No, we wanted them to log out. Panic set in on the Colonial side, and we began seeing waterlogy. Freighters were now the only hope the Brink had, but we were above, silently tracking the ships and relaying their locations back to everyone else. Once this ship was in the open water, we'd pounce, dozens of torpedoes sending the supplies to the bottom of the ocean. Our ground forces kept the pressure up, ignoring the massive Colonial bunker base on the north side of the town, and instead, they flanked west, setting up on the high ground overlooking the outskirts of the city. Anyone that would normally be protecting the western flank was still back in the city, manning AA guns trying to take care of us, but we didn't stop. We continued strafing runs on the front line, strafing runs on the back line, strafing runs in the city. The moment a vehicle would pop up out of the garage, we'd destroy it. We were even able to deal with the Colonials on the ground who would try and flank our front line. We'd spot them from above, line up our plane, do another pass, and then take them out. There was no running from the skies. One lone Colonial soldier was even seen trying to pull B-mats into his own inventory from the refinery in order to try and walk them up to the factory himself, and I killed him.
I see one guy fat walking from the refinery to the factory to make crates.
Well, kill him. Show him what's what. Yeah, there he is. He's fat walking. Yeah, they're fat walking B-mats. Oh my god.
This is just a small glimpse into the update war, what's gonna happen. But on a much larger scale.
Is this where we say skill issue? I'm not gonna lie, this was probably the most toxic logic cut I had ever seen and or taken part of in my nearly 3 or 4 years of Foxhole, but it reinforced that the new age of warfare had officially begun. Every soldier that had to fall back and sit on an anti-air gun was one less soldier at the front line. Every vehicle we destroyed made it that much easier for our ground troops to hold or attack with the limited supplies they did have. Every ship we sank made Logi players in the back lines less likely to risk their time to send supplies over here, and every plane we killed on the runway in Reavers made it that much easier to own the skies in Onyx. Foxhole's battles have always been dynamic, but the addition of the air war has made it so much more important to work together as a team for both attackers and defenders. Having air superiority is one thing, but we needed those players on the ground to flank, to build bunker bases, to run logi, to destroy defenses. Yeah, we might have made it easier for them to do their job, but you can't hold on and gain territory without boots on the ground. And I haven't even mentioned the ground crews that we had rearming, repairing, and refueling our planes too. This operation was only successful because every single person did their job. Every tiny little cog in this war machine worked together, and because of that, we were winning. I continued flying until the bunker base on the outskirts of the city was eventually destroyed, and I logged off for some much needed rest. But when I woke up the next morning, the Brink had fallen. The logic cut had worked, and remarkably, a tier 3 industrial town with a refinery, 2 factories, and garage had fallen just 12 hours later. The real war for Foxhole Airborne starts in just a few days, but if there's one takeaway from the pre-patch war, it's this: combined arms has never been better in Foxhole. If it's been a while since you've played or you've never touched the game, now is honestly the time to get in. Seriously, become a worthless cog in this military-industrial complex. You're gonna be glad you did. We're in a new era and it really feels so good. But that's it for me. Once again, the real war starts in a few days and the Royal Spuds are finalizing our plans for it, so if you would like to join us on the Wardens, I've linked the Discord down in the description below. If you did like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and let me know what you're thinking about all the new stuff in this update. But until next time, peace. Oh, this is too fun. Holy crap, dude. This is, oh my god, I'm about to no life this freaking war. Holy balls. This is incredible.